Okay, so it is Friday night, December 15th, 2023. This is the Stronghold Digital Mining Daily Update. I'm exhausted. This is typically not the time of day I prefer creating these broadcasts, but I wanted to create this broadcast because you know what? This has been a phenomenal week. Stronghold Digital Mining hosted its Investor/Analyst Day this past Tuesday, December 12th, 2023 in New York City at the NASDAQ market site. The Stronghold team got to ring the bell, so to speak, or push the button to get trading started on the NASDAQ exchange. It was absolutely awesome. Congratulations, Stronghold Digital Mining, for getting to do that. I think it's also equally important that the content of that Investor/Analyst Day, the content of that presentation was absolutely amazing. The slide presentation, that PowerPoint or PDF file, I'm not sure how that's created, but it is absolutely off the charts amazing. Whoever created that, congratulations. That is a work of art. Really, it's good. Really, really good. And it's informative. So, has that highly successful Investor/Analyst Day translated into a higher stock price? Not really, but bear in mind, we had a flash crash in the price of Bitcoin. Bear in mind, we're at the end of the year. There's going to be a lot of tax loss selling between now and year end. And also bear in mind that Stronghold Digital Mining, I think in some ways, is kind of in a penalty box, right? I think to some degree, the market wants to see this company do what it says it's going to do. Now, hey, the carboliths, right? Those things are being put in place at Scrubgrass. The very first one was already built. A second one is going to be built. All the equipment for that to happen is already on site, or so it is my understanding based on what was discussed during the Investor/Analyst Day. I am absolutely convinced that this is something that Stronghold Digital Mining is going to iterate on, and there's going to be engineering tweaks and adjustments until we get as much carbon as possible from the atmosphere, right? The beneficial use ash that is produced at both Scrubgrass and Panther Creek, thanks to the manner in which it's produced, it just naturally has the ability to pull carbon from the air. When I say naturally, I mean given the formulation of what goes into the boiler. I'm convinced that the science works. I'm equally convinced Stronghold Digital Mining is absolutely 100% focused on winning, right? Making sure that this project is a success. Not that we're going to get together again in 3 months and find out, hey, you know what, we gave up because maybe it was a little bit too challenging, or we decided we wanted to go in some other direction. It doesn't work that way. A lot of thought and effort went into this announcement that took place about a month ago when we first learned about the carbon capture initiative during the Q3 2023 investor presentation. I appreciate the discipline that Stronghold Digital Mining showed prior to bringing any information about this to market, right? Because the last thing you want to do is make an announcement and then suddenly have to backtrack substantially because you haven't done the science. You don't even know if this is going to work. It's kind of more like, hey, well, what are you doing, right? So I appreciate that there was tremendous discipline prior to that initial announcement. And you can tell, right? You could just see it. There has been a tremendous amount of thought and effort put into this carbon capture initiative. It's a really, really big deal for this company. I cannot emphasize enough how big of a deal this is for Stronghold Digital Mining. It's a really big deal. So getting back to the stock price, because we need to focus on that. What's it going to take, for the stock price to kind of start moving? Well, bear in mind, we do trade somewhat in sympathy with the price of Bitcoin. If Bitcoin, kind of collapses in price overnight, our stock price, absent something dramatic, right? Our stock price is going to trade in sympathy with that. But listen, there's no excuse. Our stock is just like in the doghouse, so to speak, right? It's terribly, terribly frustrating. you look at a stock price like ours and you say, what world are we living in, right? Like it's kind of like we've consistently been this company that's assumed to be on the precipice of failure. And that perception has persisted since last year. It's persisted through this year. What's it going to take? What's it going to take for the market to believe that we're not going anywhere? I'll tell you what, I think it's going to take adjusted EBITDA being positive. Does Stronghold Digital Mining control every single input that is going to make that a reality? No. We don't control the price of Bitcoin. We don't control grid prices. We don't control carbon capture credit market prices either, right? What we do have control over, what the company, I should say, has control over, is the ability to manage costs. If you listen very carefully to our Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Greg Beard, during his presentation at the Investor/Analyst Day, he mentions during his opening, presentation that the company's going to be keeping an eye on costs. And it's true. If you look at the trajectory of costs, right, those costs have come down. If you look at some of the highest cost quarters, right, in the company's history, we've come way, way, way down from that. And the goal, as he points out, is to try to continue upon that path of lowering costs dramatically. Now, being positioned to capture as much revenue as possible can only really happen if your data center's online and your waste mine facilities are online, right? Waste mine to power facilities are online. So that's something that's within our control. Bear in mind, the company mentioned, hey, you know what? We weren't really having the kind of uptime performance that we really wanted to see out of our data centers. So we turned to the experts at Frontier Mining. We have a managed services agreement with the Frontier team. They have now begun managing these data centers, and the preliminary results, according to Stronghold Digital Mining, and which I, just saw, when I went to Panther Creek, it was very, very loud. Okay, I can't attest to every single Bitcoin mining machine having been on, but when I was there, it was a very, very, very busy data center. And that's good because when hash prices are really productive and good, you want to be mining Bitcoin. You don't want to be oh man, we're offline again. That's not so good. When grid prices decide to not only just spike, but maybe stay elevated due to weather conditions, due to grid congestion, due to any number of different reasons, it's super frustrating and not really helpful if your mine waste to power facility, Scrubgrass in Western Pennsylvania, Panther Creek in Eastern Pennsylvania, it's not very helpful if those facilities are offline. So anything and everything that the teams can do to keep these facilities online is a good thing. These are all things that Stronghold Digital Mining has within its control. The decision to say, we want to actually send bucket upon bucket upon bucket of this beneficial use hash out to Carbonetic in California. Let's get all this stuff lab tested, not once, not twice, not 3 times, but dozens of times, so to speak, right? To really get a true sense of whether or not this material can capture carbon, that's something that's in the company's control. The decision to then say, all right, we got some preliminary test results that are positive. Let's do a field test. Again, that's something that's within the company's control. We're doing all these things. So, the final thing I'll point out, and I know this is something that a lot of others have commented on, is, you can be doing all these wonderful things, right? And you can be toiling away night and day, 24/7, Monday through Sunday, because there's no day off at a data center. There's no day off in the control room of a mine waste to power facility, right? This is a every day, all year round, right, type of endeavor. You could be doing all that, but if the world doesn't know about it, it's like it didn't even happen. So I am incredibly encouraged, profoundly encouraged, to see that Stronghold Digital Mining is very slowly but surely starting to gain some traction, just insofar as being out there in front of the media, being out there in front of analysts, being out there in front of podcasters and other interested parties, right? And really telling the story. It can't just be management. It can't just be Greg out there, because you know what? Think about it like from the perspective of a viewer, right? Well, that's what you expect a CEO to do, right? To be out there talking about the company, talking about the good the company does. I hope that it adds a little bit of extra credibility to have a citizen of the community, someone like me who's just like, hey, I live in Pennsylvania. I breathe the air. I drink the water. I care very passionately about the environment in this state that I call home. And I think it does add a little bit of extra volume, right? When somebody in the community can step up and say, you know what, I can vouch for the fact that this company is doing a public good. And they're doing it in a way that's a win for the environment, a win for communities, and a win for shareholders, for the company itself. See, the world we live in, whether we like it or not, revolves to some extent around money, right? So anything that's done and that one hopes can continue to be done needs to oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, it needs to produce some amount of useful, profitable revenue so that the endeavor can continue. This is not a charity, right? I heard Greg once say in an interview, and I'm paraphrasing, like nobody wants to fund a charity. I mean, I get it. People do fund charities, but this is a publicly traded for-profit enterprise, right? We cannot portray ourselves, right? The company cannot portray itself as a 501c3, charitable institution asking for donations, right? We need to earn our own way. That's why I believe, again, positive adjusted EBITDA is absolutely essential, right? We need to be a cash flow positive enterprise. We don't control all of our revenue inputs, right? I mean, all we can do is be online and be available. Hey, grid prices are good. Great. We have our mine waste to power facilities online. We can sell power to the grid. Grid prices aren't so good. Hey, hash prices are really, really good. Okay. Let's make sure the data centers are online, they're operational, they can be mining Bitcoin. Hey, there's an instance where power prices on the grid are so darn low that it makes more sense to just import that electricity to mine Bitcoin. Great. Let's make sure the facilities are online so we can actually do that. See what I mean? Hey, we've discovered that this beneficial use hash that we were just basically taking back, right, to the original site, it actually can capture carbon. Why don't we do something else that can not only be good for the environment, but ultimately good for us as a business? And we're doing that. So from my perspective, the company is doing the things it would, need to do, right? That one would expect it to do to be able to ultimately be in business, to ultimately serve that mission critical purpose, which is to clean up these absolutely disgusting, abominable waste coal piles. I said it, they're waste coal piles. Yeah, it's mine waste, it's garbage, it's gob, it's culm, it's junk, whatever you want to call it. It's absolute trash. It's a travesty that this garbage is still just sitting around, but I'm grateful, deeply grateful, that something's being done about it. Okay. If we, as in Stronghold Digital Mining, is able to focus on making sure that we can take advantage of those positive revenue inputs if and when they materialize, and if we're able to really, really push down costs, I'm convinced we can be a cash flow positive business. We ended 2022 as a cash flow positive enterprise. We're going to have to see what Q4 2023 has in store for us. But I am optimistic that we are on solid footing to hopefully, from my perspective, in my opinion, right, that we're going to do well in 2024 and beyond, or whatever I'm trying to say when I say that. It's late. Cut me a little bit of slack. I'm exhausted. I'm truly exhausted. Okay, with all of that said, let's stay positive. Let's be great. And we'll see each other again at some points sporadically between now and the end of the year.